So now are you into the season games every week with Yale?
Absolutely, yeah. So it's a great time, but it's a busy time. So what happens? The boys usually come back mid August, mid to late August, and then we play all the way through November. And depending on how deep you go into playoffs, could go into December. But rugby shuts down quickly around January because up here in New England it gets a little bit frosty over the winter, and then we'll pick it up again in kind of they arrive back in February and then into it for March and April. So it's unlike back home in Europe. It's peaks and troughs. When you're on, and when you're off, it goes a little bit quiet. Then you pick it up again. So it's an interesting dynamic, very different to the kind of regular week, 20, 30 weeks back over in Europe.
Yeah. And how have you found coaching in Yale?
I first of all, I love it. All right. First of all, you're just working with people who want to learn. And that's so Yale being one of the legitimate elite education universities around the world. You got Yale, you've got Harvard, you've got Oxford, Cambridge, like all these names are big, obviously, with academics. And that allows the coaching environment to be so rich because you've got people who want to learn. And they've got people who ask questions. You've got people who want rationale, who understand what's going on, which is really good and challenging as a coach as well. Because when you throw in that they are, on the whole, brand new rugby players, so you are very much starting with run forward, pass backwards, and you're trying to get all the nuances in. And these people just want to understand instantly. And sometimes I have to tell them to relax a little bit, like don't sweat the small stuff. But I think that makes a really rich rugby and particularly coaching environment, which I just love it. And they're great people to work with, and yeah, very enjoyable.
Yeah, it's interesting to say that. I found as well. I was back in Ireland. I was coaching like under 15, 17's club, and not to say they didn't want to learn or they weren't eager, but when I went to the States to Lindenwood, I was coaching like men's club team and just all American guys who had varying levels of knowledge. And that's what I found. They're just so attentive and they just wanted to learn so much.
And what I actually find interesting is sometimes, like in America, particularly with football guys, coach is king, right? Which I found really interesting because the whole philosophy and kind of how I've been brought up to coach is trying to make the players as autonomous as possible. So you want them to make decisions, and with that there's errors and there's mistakes. And I found that really interesting when sometimes they're looking at me like, give me the answer immediately. And sometimes I've got to pull myself back and go, well, what's in your long-term benefit to learning the game is not giving you the answer now. And I have to check myself sometimes as well. Like, no, like let them figure it out, And that was a really interesting kind of coaching dynamic where they're just like, just tell me, just tell me what you want me to do. I'm like, oh, it doesn't quite work out that way. So that's been a fun challenge to overcome.
Yeah, no, and it's interesting. Yeah, sometimes, yeah, it can be tell, but a lot of the times, like you say, you gotta learn by doing. And yeah, it's just interesting how different people want different things. And I found that as well. Yeah, the coach is king. And even being called coach, I was like, geez, stop. I was like, I couldn't deal with that.
It's so funny because at first I think that's just our European kind of way of thinking about it. Like, oh, stop, it's a bit awkward. But the more I kind of thought about it, it's a sign of respect, which is really, really cool. And why shouldn't our profession be respected? Like you're dealing with multiple human beings from multiple backgrounds. You've actually got more than just a transactional X and O. And I think coach is a lot more revered over here than it is particularly elsewhere. And once I come around to that, I was like, no, this is a cool job. It could and should be respected if you do it right. So I'm kind of over it now. I haven't got coach written on my back quite yet, but no, when they talk to me, it's pretty cool.
Yeah, 100%. It is absolutely respect. And how did you get into coaching?
So I started playing at 5 at my local rugby club in England, a little village town team called Oakham. Started playing there. Had way too much energy for my mum, so she sent me to any sport she could. So I played through there, got myself into academies such as Leicester Tigers and Northampton Saints. So I was always on the periphery of pretty good coaching. And then it was about 20. I've kind of fast forward a few steps here, but it was around 20 when I was playing up in the Premiership in Scotland for a team called Herets, where I realized I'm an all right player, but I'm probably not going to go to that next level. But I always knew, like, I always thought about the game, and then maybe my skill set or my ability wasn't going to take me to that next level. But I was always in and around decent players and decent coaching environments. And I thought, oh, hang on, like, even though my career might not be playing rugby, I could certainly work towards coaching rugby. And I remember there I was coaching like under 6s, under 7s, under 8s. And I don't know where it came from, but it was always the wisest move I now know I made was I look at coaching as like, you're in an internship in JP Morgan and you're making the coffees for the big dogs, right? Like, coaching is time in the saddle. So I was like, the more I can coach the younger people, I'm just working on that experience. I'm just how to manage a group essentially. And I tell you what, on some Sunday mornings, I used to drag myself out of bed. You know, I had many other things I probably wanted to be doing at that stage, i.e. nothing after usually a Saturday night out. But I knew this was my grounding. And then I went to I did my level 1 with the Scottish Rugby Union at Curry Rugby Club, and that just kind of helped formalize it somewhat. And then, just for sheer luck, my girlfriend at the time, she was at Edinburgh University and she was moving to Hong Kong to do 9 months teaching out there. And I knew a good thing when I had it, and I wanted to follow her. So I literally cold called the rugby union, cold called the Hong Kong Rugby Union, went, look, I'm a young coach. I just really want an opportunity. Please, like, is there anything out there? And I got an email back from a guy called Robbie McRobbie, who's turned out to be a very, very influential man in my career, as it were. But I thought it was a spoof, you know, because I told my mate, someone called Robbie McRobbie, I'm like, they're having a laugh. I'm like, someone's having a laugh with me. I told my mates to send me an email. So I was a bit coy on my cautious when I emailed back, but it turned out there was a rugby club over there called Nomads, and they were Division 4 Hong Kong. Now that's pretty low. It's pretty low. But what it was, they were looking to climb up the leagues, and the rugby union wanted another team to start climbing up the leagues. And they didn't have the funds to bring in an established coach. So I was like, look, I can utilize my playing. I can coach the team, and the only way was up, right? And it was just learning from those experience. So I just went, absolutely. I remember they helped me get out there and just, you know, pocket money sort of thing, but it was an opportunity. And then that's when it really started to take off. When I got over to Hong Kong, the resources and the support that the rugby union had and gave me was just fundamental, and that allowed me to coach professionally, essentially, or full-time is probably a better word, whilst having no pressures of results, you know, which was a really, really lucky thing at the time. And I had some brilliant mentors like Lee Jones, who's with Leicester Tigers now. You've got Di Reese, who's back over at the Dragons. You've got Craig Hammond, who's with Nottingham. You've got Andy Hall, who's coaching at Upping. I'm like, all these guys were so influential in my coaching career. And it just kind of kept snowballing from there. And it just kept going. But it kind of, long story short, it was all to do with knowing that I wanted my life to be in rugby, but I knew it wasn't going to be playing.
Cool. Lots there. And what was your experience like in the academies as a player?
And I was actually thinking about this not so long ago. Leicester was interesting, like, because Leicester at the time as well, particularly early 2000s, like, they were the team, and I always felt I didn't quite belong. It was quite a cliquey environment, however, very successful, right? So I think if you were in, right? And I always felt I was never quite in there. And then it came to cuts. I got cut around 16 and went over to Northampton, which I found was a completely different environment. It was really welcoming, really, really enjoyable. And it was a nice tonic from what I experienced at Leicester. Not to say the coaching wasn't great, but it just felt a lot more transactional. You know, it was a lot more, if you weren't the best, you weren't really that looked after. But again, brilliant kind of IQ over there. Northampton just felt a little bit more family-like. I felt a lot more comfortable playing. I felt a bit more like myself, and I really, really enjoyed that. And I stayed there pretty much through to 18. Didn't quite get the full senior contract from there, but again, it was a great experience, and it really, really helped enjoy my rugby. And I think I kind of took that with me as well as a coach. Like, how do you make people feel, even if it's not necessarily the best player or someone who's going to win you games or whatever that might be? Like, you've got to make them feel like they're part of the environment if they're putting in the work. You know, that's pretty key as well. So I think the academy's exposure to rugby was great, and I wouldn't go back on what I did, but I think learning from those environments, and it's only upon reflection of those recently that I could probably articulate it a bit better than I could certainly at the time.
Cool. And would you do anything differently looking back?
As a player?
Yeah.
See, I don't think it's even strong of having no regrets, because I kind of fast forward now. A lot of my friends who did make it pro are finishing around 36 now, are finishing around now, maybe coming out with injuries or whatever it might be, and they're just starting their coaching career. Well, now I've got 15 years already kind of in the bank. So I don't think I truly had the desire to be a professional rugby player. I think I maybe I would have liked it, but I don't think I really had that real, and maybe I feel I couldn't make it. Maybe that was part of it, but I wouldn't look back with any regrets, because I got to play a good level in Scotland, met some great people while playing good rugby, but also enjoying yourself as well. Particularly Herriot's Rugby Club. It was a high performing team, but it was also pretty high performing off field as well. You know, like, it was really good bunch of guys. And then it allowed me to go over and then play in Hong Kong. And now to just immerse yourself in a completely different city, a great rugby environment where you're mixing with top end CEOs, local Chinese, you've got teachers, you've got back, and I just really, really loved that 7 years of my life. And I don't think I would have got that as a pro rugby player. I wouldn't have had that experience. I might have had different ones, and it's all, who knows. But no, I wouldn't look back on it, because it allowed me to start coaching, and coaching is what I really, really love doing. And it allowed me to do that at 20 years of age and pursue it. So I kind of feel I got the best of both worlds. I got good exposure. I was in and around good programs and good people and good players, but my disposition wasn't all about winning on the weekend. You know, it wasn't, or am I going to get a contract, or where am I next? You look at players like in Worcester now, you know, it's like, wow, like that's quite jarring. So yeah, long story short, no, I wouldn't, you know.
Good stuff. And what is it like in Hong Kong, or the rugby environment there? Because I've heard quite a bit. When I was in Linwood, I lived with a guy, a South African from Hong Kong, where, you know, went there when he was 6, and he told me a little bit. And now I coach a girl who plays Canada Sevens and grew up in Hong Kong and then moved over to Vancouver. And there's good rugby players there. Seriously
good. And a lot of it's to do for Hong Kong Sevens, right? The Hong Kong Sevens is the bankroll of the whole rugby union. Now, you can see the jeopardy that has with the Hong Kong Sevens being not on for the last 4 or 5 years, or three or 4 years. That's had a major impact on Hong Kong rugby. So they've had to lose their pro team. They've lost a lot of coaches because they couldn't support the environment they were creating. So it was this kind of weird juxtaposition of high performance rugby with a tier 3, quote unquote tier 3 nation of rugby. You know, it was really interesting. And from a coaching point of view, it was incredible. Like I mentioned a few of the guys I was rubbing shoulders with. You got Joe Shaw, who's now the head coach of Saracens, who's been there throughout their success. He was like a close friend and mentor of mine. You've got such a melting pot of Australian, of New Zealand, of European players in that environment. So that's really pretty cool as well. And then you've got the mini section, which is just incredible, particularly the girls section as well. Like the mini rugby or youth rugby out there is it's world class, because it's well funded, it's well supported. There's proper pathways in place, and it is such a vibrant environment. I have no doubt once the sevens are back on, it's going to really start picking up again. But I owe a lot, almost everything to my coaching is to do with what Hong Kong gave me, for sure.
Good stuff. And pro team. So there's a fully professional team in Hong Kong, or is that
There
like
was,
national?
so their national team, unfortunately, it's just been disbanded. Their national team went pro, and don't quote me on the exact dates, but it was all in preparation for the World Cup in Japan. And unfortunately, they lost out in the repechage. I think they got beat by Canada, I believe. And they lost out, and I know they're going to the repechage again this year, but they're going as part-timers. So they really went hard to get into the World Cup, particularly with Japan being guaranteed a place now. So there's an opportunity for the second Asian team. Along with that, we haven't even mentioned the sevens. They have a pretty vibrant sevens team out there, and that's slightly different because that's through the Sports Institute. So that's Olympic funding through the government. But yeah, they had a pro team, and then they also had a team which is just disbanded. The whole league did. It was called the Asia Pacific Tigers, I believe, and they played in the Australian League. I don't know if it was very brief, and I think it's when Western Force was looking for extra opportunity before they got brought back into the Super Rugby fold. So there's always been a real want for pro rugby in Hong Kong, and unfortunately COVID just completely wiped that out, just as it was really getting going.
Yeah, and lastly on it, but there is opportunities for, say, foreign players to go and play in Hong Kong, and pro rugby, there's different levels to it, but like to get looked after a little bit, or like there is a vibrant like top league there, like club.
Yeah, there's some very good teams. So there's a good friend of mine, Stephen Dowse. He's the director of Hong Kong Football Club. Now, their facilities are envious worldwide. You're right in the middle of a racetrack. You've got Valley, which is a very strong New Zealand connection. So they're always pretty strong. I was involved with Hong Kong Scottish, which has obviously got a Scottish feel. And you even just look at the national team. I was lucky enough to get capped with the national team while I was out there, and it's just such a great kind of what Hong Kong is, the multicultural environment, and that very much reflects in rugby. And to be out in Hong Kong, I believe now you need a work visa, so it's not just playing rugby out there. You will need to work in a different environment or in banking. So it's also great for people who want to play top rugby whilst build a career. It doesn't have to be one or the other. And I think that's what's pretty special about it, because you get really ambitious people in both sides of the coin, the rugby coin and the also working coin.
How did you find your way over to America then?
Oh, all chance, honestly. So my wife is so my girlfriend at the time has now turned into my wife. She's American. And we always thought that America is where we wanted to go. I also had, from a pretty young age, a real desire to coach on a collegiate campus. Like there was just something I just pictured, the big American campus, everyone walking around. It's probably from all those high school movies, but I was like, I want to be there. I want to coach there. And it was a complete chance. I just heard a conversation from a couple of my mates working in the rugby union at the time. They were like, oh, this guy from Yale University has been in, and he was asking about developing their rugby program. And I knew enough that Yale was a very strong brand name worldwide. So I was like, hang on a minute. So I asked them, I was like, what are you on about? And he goes, yeah, this guy over looking to develop their program, didn't know much about it. So I got in touch with my boss, Lee Jones, at the time. And I went, Lee, I was like, tell me more, connect me with this guy. And he was like, yeah, absolutely, I'll connect you. And it was a gentleman called Philip Lynch. He's a Yale alum, but living in Hong Kong now, involved with the Hong Kong rugby out there, but like he's in a different sector, but he was the chairman of the Yale Rugby Board. And what happened, so kind of jumping a few steps, there's a couple of teams out here in the Ivy League, particularly Dartmouth and Brown, who elevated their rugby program via support, through financial support. Brown, probably Dartmouth was maybe 15 years ago, Brown was maybe 10 years ago, and Yale wanted to jump on that bandwagon as well, and to get a full-time coach, essentially. So I got in touch through Lee. He put me in touch with Philip. We met for a coffee, and it kind of just snowballed from there. They told me the program, we were looking to take it full time. I was like, look, I'm definitely interested. And I remember it all moved pretty fast. I got invited out to, they were having an alumni event in the spring of 2014. Went out, met everyone. It was like a long interview essentially, but like we played golf, they played rugby. It was just like pretty immersive. A few weeks later, once I got home, they gave me a ring going, look, Craig, thanks, loved what you're about, but we're just looking for someone with a bit more experience. And I was like, oh, look, no worries. I really, really appreciated the experience. Thank you. And what they did, they rang me up. So they gave it to a different person called Greg McWilliams. And Greg is back. He was with Yale, worked with USA, but now he's back in Ireland, actually coaching the Irish women's team. So Greg got the role. I obviously didn't know at the time, but the board rang me up going, look, would you be interested in coming out? We want to do the same with the women's program than we did with the men. And I was like, absolutely, because I really wanted to get out to the US and work here. And again, it was all much like moving to Hong Kong. It was all for opportunity, and the opportunity came up to come over to Yale. And fast forward, I was head coach with Yale women since so it would have been 2015. I came out. I was with them for 3 years as head coach, whilst assistant coach for men with Greg, and then as Greg left, oversaw both programs. So now essentially director of both the men and the women. So it kind of just morphed into that role over the 7 years. But it was all from, if I didn't hear that conversation in the office at that time, I certainly wouldn't be sitting here. I know it for a fact. That's pretty cool. The sliding door moments are pretty cool.
It is. It's very funny how things in life, certain things happen, and then it's like, oh, now here I am.
Exactly. And like 7 years later, it's like, wow. But yeah, very, very grateful for that.
Yeah, good stuff. And so you're director of rugby. What is it like day to day? Or so you're over both director of rugby of the both programs, we'll say, and how does that work coaching, or what's it like?
So overall, the broad spectrum is that I'm the head coach of the men's program, director of the whole program, head coach of the men, and help oversee the women's program. And we've brought in 2 excellent coaches for the Yale women's program. We've got Zanny Brown, who she was actually the captain when Harvard transitioned from club to varsity, which in America is a big distinction. She was very, very much part of that, and we're very lucky that she's doing a PhD at Yale now. And also we've got Nikki Campbell, who's a local player and is going to be such a good coach moving forward, who's come over to join Zanny. And we just felt it was really important that the women had women role models as coaches and coaching opportunities for women in the women's game. And Zanny and Nikki have been absolutely brilliant. So I kind of help oversee there. So I kind of do all the not so glamorous stuff, like book the buses and make sure the referees are there, the floodlights turned on. So just really letting their coaches coach. And then on the men's side, I'm much more hands-on with the X's and O's. And likewise, I have some staff that work with me who are massively influential to the program. So I'm out on the field pretty much Monday to Friday. The men are on the field Monday, Wednesday, Friday. The women are Tuesday, Thursday. We play Saturday. So in the fall and in the spring, it's pretty intense on the field. and just making sure all the admin's done, because if the bus doesn't turn up, that ain't ideal, right? So you can forget how good your game plan is if you can't get on the bus to the game, So that's really good for me, and just making sure my admin skills are on point.
Yeah. And are you involved with Rugby New York, to see?
Yeah, so I've been involved with Rugby New York for coming into my it'll be my third season now. So predominantly with the academy. So I work with Mike Petrie, and he's like a USA rugby legend, 3 World Cups. He was a scrum half, fantastic player, even better guy. Really, really, really good man. So I work directly with him with the academy. And I was lucky enough, again, all opportunity. I remember not the season just gone, but the one before, where there was a bit of a coaching change at New York, and I was around helping out with the academy, and one of the coaches moved back to New Zealand for an opportunity, and it kind of left the head coach Marty Veal at the time in a bit of he was on his own. So again, I was hanging around, and I was just coaching the academy, and they were like, "Look, do you want to come and work with our senior team, mainly looking after the non-starters or the bench, to make sure the first team are getting really, really good reps." So towards the end of the 2021 season, it would have been, I was fully immersed in the first team. And again, it was like, it just went from right place, right time. And I remember they got to the conference finals, got beat on quite a bit of a rough call from a referee, as they always are when they get beat in a close game, right? But that experience with the senior team was just really, really great. You had people like Andy Ellis at 9, the All Black winning captain, and it wasn't not captain, but World Cup winner back in 11. It was not so much what they did on the field, it's how they conducted themselves off the field and the kind of leadership around that. So again, just getting exposure in and around the New York environment, which is so unique and so interesting, was just really lucky. And then whilst working with the up and coming guys who are hopefully going to represent the New York team in many years to come. So yeah, very much involved with them, and I love it.
Nice. And what were the kind of things off the field that how they were carrying themselves?
It's just culture. Culture is such a really big word and a big theme, but like, I loved how they narrowed down, and I don't want to give too much away of what they're about, but it was all about building the skyline, like using New York skyscrapers as real imagery of building something special, because it was a new team. So theming was really interesting around how they themed, and how like the second team was called the Blacksmiths, and they were the guys forging the iron, and you were trying to build this really special thing, and the imagery was pretty powerful around that. And I haven't really been exposed to too much imagery in seasons before that, so that was pretty neat. And also just how they often use the word connection, and I've taken that instantly to Yale. Like, everything we do, we want to be connected. And that's not just in, like, for example, line speed and defense. That's when we're off the field. That's when we're wearing the right gear. Are we talking to each other in the right way? Like, are we just connected? And that was such a powerful word. And they always brought it forward. They always celebrated if someone was really connected in whatever way they thought it might be. And I just thought that was really quite powerful, and made me think a bit deeper than just the rugby side of things. It's like, because you're actually on the field a lot less than you're off the field. So off the field, you should be spending a lot of time practicing what you do off the field, because that's you spend most of your time in that environment, and that was really interesting.
Yeah, for sure. And what's the pathway system like then? You were saying you're working like quite a bit with the young guys. And so, yeah, what is it? So I know there's the collegiate draft for players in the MLR, and then what's the landscape like for the academy?
Right now, it honestly depends on team to team. And I think that's the big thing globally. I think USA is trying to figure out is what is the pathway. Obviously, there's USA rugby, like under 20s and under 18s, but being honest, that's very much a pay to play model. and I think that's quite inhibiting for a lot of the US population. And if we're going to tap into the true athletes, what we always hear about out here, like, money is a factor. And right now, if you can't afford to be in a USA national camp in California and you're from the East Coast, you ain't going to get seen, and you're not going to get those opportunities. So I think that's the $1 million question. Like, what is the pathway? I think within New York, particularly in our area, it's all about trying to find those true tri-state, Connecticut, New Jersey, New York players, and making that an environment that they can be exposed to good coaching and good rugby and New York rugby's way of playing as early as possible. And we're still trying to figure out the best time for that, because you don't want to get in the way of the colleges, because the colleges have such an important time they've got more time with the players than an academy ever will, because they're in college. And I think that needs to be celebrated. And then in the summer months, for example, or the non-college months, that's when the academy can really kind of pick up, and it can be more similar to college. It can be more peaks and troughs. Like, right, summer, we're getting after it for 6 weeks as an academy. And then hopefully we unearth those new players. But it is the big question. If you talk to someone down in Houston, I just picked out a team there, they might be doing something completely different. And I think there needs to be a bit more synergy around the pathways, because it is the future, right? And if you start getting the 14 to 16-year-olds in the rugby environments, that's only going to help them in college, and it's only going to help them into Major League Rugby.
Yeah, 100%. And do you do a bit of traveling for that? Like, is that my geography? Are you a bit away?
So no, there's a bit. So the East Coast teams tend to hang out. So New York is somewhat central. So we played DC, which is just 3 or 4 hours south. You've got Boston, which is 4 hours north. You've got Toronto, which is a little bit further, but in terms of US, it's not that fast. Maybe 6-7 hours. That's just a short bus journey for the guys over here. So there is, they kind of play regionally, but I think there's a wonderful opportunity that we could have more kind of festivals of rugby. So like for one weekend, all the academies come together in a location and play. And maybe it doesn't have to be your traditional 80-minute games. It could be your 40-minute games or whatever. But like, create more festivals where it's over a weekend or a long weekend, where most of the MLR teams come in, and then they can go from there. And it can become a lot more than just. You can get scouts there, for example, from the teams. You can get just many opportunities around sponsorship or whatever it might be. I just think festivals could be the way forward, because the sheer logistics of the US is a nightmare. Like New York can't play LA in academy. Like you've got to get on a 6-hour flight. That's just the start of it. Like, how would you get 30 people paying $500 a flight? You haven't even started about the hotel. So money comes into it. So how do we create those opportunities? And maybe it's been discussed and maybe it's a pipe dream, but I think that's something what could be really, really cool. But right now we try and play in DC and particularly Boston.
Good stuff. Yeah, it's great to see stuff happening, and those conversations happening. And how did you get started then with the contact coach and the stuff you do online?
Yeah, so that's all COVID induced, right? So I've always been pretty big on analysis. I've really liked diving into a game. I've liked coding up a game. I liked just seeing the nuances of what's going on. And I used to create these little videos for Yale. Say, just for example, in and around the Six Nations, we're working on the Jackal. And I would like pull out videos of Jacqueline and what that is, and create little videos, but keep them all in-house. So I always liked that part of the game. And I've also used video as a real accelerator in learning, particularly with US players who don't necessarily know the nuances of the game, just to kind of dive down and use video as an extra coaching aid, which I think is vital. And then when COVID hit, I couldn't coach. So it was like, right, I've got to keep my mind sharp. So I made these videos, and I just stuck it out on YouTube. I just had a YouTube channel, like I think me and my mum followed me or something at that one point, and I was like, look, I've got literally nothing to lose, right? I made a video and it was so rudimentary. It was like cut up, and then I was doing like circles with just the Mac software that I have, and it was all pieced together. And I remember I did a tackling video. It was my first ever video. I did one analyzing Sam Underhill's tackling technique, and I think it was from the 2019 World Cup or fixtures in and around then. And I just put it out there. I literally put it out there, and it caught a bit of traction. And it was like, oh, I like this, and like going on. So I did another one, and I did another one, and it kept growing. And then soon I did one on Aaron Smith and TJ Perinara, I believe, on their running lines, just their cheat lines as nines. And that flew to like 100,000 views on YouTube instantly. It was like, holy moly, this is like, people like this, and I wasn't getting pelters in the comments going, you're an idiot or whatever. It was like, oh, thank you, because social media can be pretty brutal. So overall, the feedback was great, and I wasn't coaching. It was keeping my mind sharp. I was watching rugby. It was forcing me to analyze. It was forcing me to articulate. And it all just went from there. And then an opportunity came up with Coach Paint, which Coach Paint is if you look at my videos now, is like all the animations, like you would see on Monday Night Football, BT Sport, or whatever it is, like proper graphics. And that just really highlighted and elevated my videos to a whole new level. And my big thing was just trying to keep like rugby simplified. Like I use that quite a lot. Like rugby is pretty complex, but like how can we narrow the coaching point to something simple so some people can understand, and I can understand. And that's where it all came about. It was COVID induced, and then just kept going from there. So it was like, all right, next step is create an Instagram channel, and then that's blown up as well. So that's pretty big. And then what it has done is just created so many networks and opportunities and ways to just chat rugby with other people around the world. And it's went so much further than I ever thought it was. I was just putting it out there, and I had no agenda, apart from sharing some videos. And yeah, and like here we are,
Yeah, it's cool. Very cool. And yeah, we probably wouldn't be chatting. I don't know, would we have bumped into each other? Who knows?
And that's it. Like opportunities like this. And then I created my own little podcast for a while. Look, and I was never married to like, I was just playing around with different ideas. I did my podcast, and I try to keep it really unique. It was only 3 minutes long, like, because it was rugby simplified, like what's simple. And I had like Jace Ryan on there, and Ian McGeekin, and Connor O'Shea. And like all of a sudden through these videos, I was allowed to connect. Allowed is the wrong word, but like it gave me some kudos and some kind of social credit, like to reach out to these guys and be like, please talk to me, like, because at the end of the day, if no one's listening to the podcast or no one's watching the videos, like I'm learning, I'm always learning. I've got nothing to lose. And that's always been my mentality. When I got on the plane to Hong Kong, I had nothing to lose, right? It was an opportunity. When I came over to Yale, I had nothing to lose, because you can always go exactly back to where you started. This social media stuff and like content in general, I've got nothing to lose. I've got everything to gain, and it's been pretty cool and pretty powerful, actually.
100%. It's a brilliant point you make. And a lot of people get held back from doing a lot of things because just fear of failure, or fear of like just fear in general. But like you say, when you've nothing to lose, like,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? Like you really don't. And I've seen that as well myself. Just like you can always go back to wherever you were with anything.
Exactly, mate. And I'm sure on your podcast as well, like I can only imagine the things you've learned, you know what I mean? Just chatting with these guys, and just and also bigger picture, like how to be commitment to time, how to produce a video, how to produce content, it's all messaging. And then for me as well, like doing the videos and putting it out there. Okay, when's a good time to put it out on social media? So you're learning about algorithms, you're learning about, okay, that video didn't do as well as the last one. Why? Maybe my messaging was off. Message or marketing for me is messaging. Messaging is coaching. you know, so it all comes back, and these skills are so interrelatable.
100%. It is so interesting, yeah, and it's all linked up as well. Yeah, I found so many things like that, like learning how to, even you say making videos and different things, and like I'm not a tech person at all, never was, or but I'm learning like how do you put out a podcast, how do you put stuff on
Yeah,
Instagram, content. Like I'm not, that's not my forte, never was, but it's very important because like I'm on a mission to help young players with the mental side of the game. So like I have to learn how to make
yeah,
videos. I have to learn how to make a podcast. I have to learn, and it helps my coach on the field too, because
yeah,
like you say with yours, your videos, which are unreal. That's how I saw you first, and
thank
enjoy
you.
them. And but it's similar, different stuff. It's like you have to connect with people,
Mhm.
and that's what coaching is, like you said.
Yeah, and it really is like like my best coaching is done in a coffee shop, right? Because that's where you get to meet and build rapport and build a relationship and get to know the people you're working with, you know, and that's when you're like, right, you're learning about them, you're learning about where they came from, you're learning like why they're here and what their motivations are, and also you can get ahead of something that's not going well, like, right, oh, they've had really rough academics this semester, like, how's your academics, how's it going, are you on top of it, why don't you take this session off, like, and sometimes you find like less is more, and like the stronger relationship I have, and I use the coffee shop as a kind of good analogy. It is true, my caffeine intake has went through the roof over here, but it's what you connect, how you connect with the individual allows you to then coach the individual, then coach the player, because you can connect on a much deeper level and there's a lot more trust, and that has been really powerful for me as well, just getting to know the players better and then getting to know me. I think that's pretty key as well.
100%. Yeah, so important. And I saw as well you did was it a master's in Harvard on leadership or principles of
But not
leadership?
quite. I did my master's. I did my performance coaching master's through Sterling University. Not quite Harvard, but it was pretty cool to have. And honestly, like the master's in performance coaching was so fundamental to how I coach now, because I went this really weird route, right? So I went to classic. After college in the UK, after sixth form, I went to university, and I went to university for all the wrong reasons. I went is because that's a path well trodden. I went there for a year. I got really, really, really good at FIFA and very, very, very bad at studying, right? Like I went for all the wrong reasons. And if that was 04, and then so summer of 05, I went over to New Zealand to watch and follow the British Lions tour. And I ended up staying out there and playing for 9 months, and I didn't come home and I didn't finish my degree, which was really interesting. So that was kind of when I moved up to Scotland and started playing there. And so I didn't finish my undergraduate degree, but from that time to moving to Hong Kong to 2014, so 08 is when I moved to Hong Kong, and then 14 is when I was finishing up my master's. Between that time, I managed to build up enough relevant coaching experience that at a level which was deemed applicable, that I could go straight onto a master's degree. Now, talk about lucking out, right? Like I didn't have to do a 3-year, 4-year undergraduate. I could show my body of work from coaching. So that allowed me to go straight onto a master's degree. And I'm so thankful for that, because I got to study exactly what I wanted to study, really relevant to my career, with practical experience behind me, which I can now underpin with theoretical learning. So I went straight onto a master's. So I've got a master's degree without an undergraduate degree. Like how cool is that? I think I'm a very lucky man. And without that master's degree, I would never have got a visa for the US, because you need to demonstrate that you belong. You can coach here what a US person, quote unquote, couldn't do. That's part of the visa. So got the master's, got into Yale, coaching at Yale. And then from there, I did a leadership course through Harvard. And the leadership course was, again, through COVID. I wasn't doing much. So I had time on my hands, and it was just a really wonderful opportunity, again, to to maybe underpin some of the leadership stuff I've been doing, but like underpin it with theory. And that was really cool, because that wasn't sport related, that was all environment related, and that was essentially dialing down on your relationships and your communication, how you create an environment. And it was just really cool because you're in with a lot of business leaders. And again, it's not just because rugby can get quite small, and like you always think about rugby, so thinking outside the box was pretty powerful. So that was a really useful course to do certificate to do through Harvard. But yeah, it's not quite a Harvard master's degree, I can't quite say that, but in terms of the learning, wow, mate, it's been very impactful on my day-to-day coaching life and general communication.
Yeah, cool. And so what kind of stuff did you learn in that leadership course?
So a lot was about how you create the environment and your role within it, and what type of leader you are. So understanding who you are as a leader and what's your natural disposition. Are you naturally quite wound up? Or are you quite naturally relaxed? Are you quite naturally, whatever it might be? And just really kind of dialing down on a lot of self-reflection about what your leadership style is, and also what your blind spots are. Okay. And just being really, really reflective on that. So for me, is just making sure if I start something, I continue through with it. Like I've got a lot of ideas, and like being really dialing down, like, is this going to continue, or do I need someone along my side who can help elevate that idea? So that comes down to your coaching staff as well. So I lean on them as well, because I'm very big on collaboration. I like to talk things through. I like to hear him. And I know I'm not precious about feedback, which has been really quite cool, but I need to collaborate. So I'm not very good solo. You know what I mean? I need a lot of support in that sense. So that's in terms of my assistant coaches or coaching team. They support me in that, and that could be a blind spot if I don't get ahead of it. I could go down a different route. So it's just been really, really reflective of yourself, how that impacts others and the environment that you create, and just being conscious of that, and getting people around you to tell you what your blind spots are, and so you can all get better.
Cool. Yeah, the self-awareness thing is so important, and same for players too. Like, I know it comes up quite a lot when I'm working with players on the mindset side of the game, with say pre-match, or how they need to be around a team environment. And this is certainly something that I myself, when I was younger, I felt I needed to be very serious. I felt I needed to be a certain way, like act a certain way, before we even got togged out. Like when we met for the team meeting, I had to be a certain way and act a certain way, and that isn't really me. I'm just more relaxed. I'm a more relaxed person. I'm chilled and laid back, but that takes a lot out of you as well. It takes a lot of energy, and it's just, as it is important to have that self-awareness, and think of how you are.
Yeah, just understanding what the environment needs at the time, and when it's time to be individual, when it's time to be you're connecting as a group now. And I always remember back in the day playing rugby, it was like everyone in a huddle, and you're all banging your feet, and you got the guy going crazy, and it was a bit like that never meant a lot to me. You know what I mean? And then what was really weird, when I was a captain a lot of the teams, you know what I mean? I was a captain a lot of the teams, and I saw senior people do that. So here's me in the middle, like, stamp, what do? And I'm like, it's so unauthentic now. I look back on it, like it was just going through, and like, but on the other hand, I wasn't super chilled. But I kind of needed like a little, I don't know, like on the periphery of the aggression, but not with the guys who are just kind of not mucking around, but relaxing. But like now I'm like, so when my captains, like when we talk to the captain, we talk about why they are captain and that role within in the team, and like essentially be yourself, be authentic to the you and to what the environment needs, and And it's all about, as long as you're all on the same page and you get to that same page, whatever point that might be. And that's so unique to an environment, because what the team you're coaching right now is probably different to the team that I'm coaching. And it's allowing the individuals to be individuals, but there comes a time when you're connecting as a team, and and that is the $1 million question. Like, how do you get that right on a weekly basis? Because personalities change, weeks change, like stresses change. So how do you keep things consistent? I find it fascinating, but yeah, I'm not big on the old stamping in a huddle anymore.
Yeah, I nearly laughing there. I was remembering a coach that I had when I was younger, under 20s, and he used to have us do before the game is we all got into a huddle, and then he went into the middle and started screaming and shouting, and then he used to go around like literally punch certain people. Like in the chest.
Always the big guy, probably the big guy.
And then one day a guy, because we'd all of our arms in a huddle, so we couldn't defend ourselves.
Yeah.
So like you've your chest exposed, like you're in a huddle, and he go around like some open hand, like a lot of the time, like hitting you, and like you'd be trying not to catch eye contact with him.
Yeah, you didn't want it.
Yeah, and then one time a guy dropped his arms and kind of went through and went back at him before a game. But oh my god, it was so funny looking back.
Brilliant, isn't it? And that was all for the coach. That wasn't for anyone else, but for the coach, And no, I look back on it and I crack up now. You know what I mean? Like, it was just stamping in the middle of a changing room. You got like, it was just, I mean, good memories, but in terms of sports performance, I doubt it did a lot. Like it's a fascinating topic,
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, it's funny. And it's something that is important as well. I learned it very early on, years back, coaching, to not, or be aware of how you were coached. And because what a lot of us do, and probably everyone does when you start out coaching, is you coach the way you were coached, and Absolutely. That can be good or bad. And I certainly would have done things that weren't great, and I think I've just taken the good things now, because I'm lucky to have had some great coaches.
So the big thing I absolutely, like, I remember I would do drills very much because, one, I remembered them, or I was unprepared. So I went on rugbydrills.com and like, oh, that looks fancy. And like, and then go and just do that. And it had no rationale and no context. No rationale and context. Now I'm like, so everything I do now, and I've got, I have a plan every session. It's always planned very much in advance. What's the context and how does it relate to our style of play? Like that's so key. I always talk about context, and I mainly talk about that to remind myself, like, it's really important that for me, a player could see what they're doing in practice, whether it's drill or game, like, because there's time and a place. Is there a key context to the game? And is there some rationale that this is why we're doing it? And I always got to ask myself that question. Is it contextual? Does it have rationale? And that's been a really good kind of guiding light for me. And not, I can't always answer 1,000,000% yes, but it's certainly helped put sessions in the right direction. And the players, we haven't got all the time in the world, so we've got to use our time really wisely. So that's been a big guiding light for me.
Yeah, good stuff. Hey, Craig, been unreal chatting. Really enjoyed it, and best of luck with the season ahead and all the different things you're doing.
No, thank you, and great work on what you're doing. Like, it's really cool, and I just love chatting rugby, and like, hopefully our paths cross. I know we're due to be in Ireland in the spring. I don't know if you're back over there now, but it's always cool to catch up.
For sure.